then we reduce the distribution of content. So if it's on the platform, a lot fewer people will see it. And then we also have informative labels. So when people see content about coronavirus, they often also see information, links to information from the public health expert. And when a piece of content has been rated false, people will see a clear false label and link to the debunking article from the fact checker. So through the combination of these efforts, we've been able to slow down the spread of misinformation about the virus without disproportionately utilizing people who genuinely want to have discussions about it. Okay. I think I'll stop right there.
Thank you, Gustav, Charles. Good morning, everyone. I think everybody here knows Meta, but I'm not sure that you already know ICT Watch yet. So let me introduce ICT Watch first. ICT Watch is the Indonesian CSO who concerned about the digital literacy, and we have already campaigned what is issued since 2002, so almost 10 years now. And I think during the pandemic, hoaxes related to the COVID-19 and also the vaccination is spread. Not only, I think it's globally, not only in Indonesia. So what we do in this pandemic issue, infodemic issue, we call it four C's. There are four C's that we do the collaborative work with every multi-stakeholders. First C is the capacity building. So we try to conduct the online education roadshow to many cities in Indonesia, collaborate with the local campus and also local communities there. And also after the pandemic decline, we also conducted the hybrid workshop with this issue as well, with the several local campus. And the second C is the content development. We try to build the education content with online classes in the Udemy for hoax, and invite resource person from various organizations like the COVID-19 task force from the government, the fact check journalist alliance, and also from the police and so on. We also make the short documentary movie called Hoaxinasi. It's from hoax and the vaccination. And we try to portray the perspective of the people who still think that this COVID and the vaccination is just the conspiracy theory. We try to see the perspective of them, what they think about this pandemic issue. And also we made some animated videos for education, short animated videos, collaboration with well-known content creator, and post it in their social media so it can be reach many people. And third G is the community engagement with the local approach, such as together with WhatsApp Indonesia. Since 2021, we are supporting local young people. We called this program is Jawara Internet Sehat, or Stable Wellness Local Champion, to carry out the educational program with the local wisdom approach, and try to fulfill needs of the local communities. We also support the local artists. Then we know they have been badly affected with this pandemic, to create a traditional folk theatrical performance, and we try to broadcast it online with the anti-hoax message. So we hope that this kind of approach not only touch the artists but also the people. And then the last one is the co-creation. We try to create the web page as a simple web page from the link tree, but we try to combine all aggregate the hoax debunking tools. So we know that a lot of debunking tools has been developed, and so we try to make it into one page so people can easily use it. I think that's our experience, our work since the pandemic for the combating hoax. Thank you, Gustav. Maybe Dr. Park, you can.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
I was mainly recruit. You know that this session is an amalgamation of one session on COVID-19 and the other session on election. I was mainly recruited to speak about election, but I can share experience from Korea on disinformation in general. Only last month, about 140 victims who were punished for disinformation back in 1960s under the military dictatorship of General Park were granted compensation for false imprisonment. They were jailed for spreading false information about state of emergency and the new constitution that the military junta declared back in I'm bad with numbers, 1967 or so. It took about 50 years for the country to realize the harms of criminally punishing false information. And this is consistent with the positions of many international human rights bodies that punishing information for will only stamp out attempts to correct the falsity. Because in many cases, the reason falsity, truth becomes so important for people is because there is a debate. The reason whether masks are good for people or not was the reason that was debated only was because COVID-19 was so new. So there had to be vigorous debate to really get down to the truth and spread the confirmed truth. So therefore, criminal punishment for false information is not a good way to protect the truth and promote spread of truth. And COVID-19, for COVID-19, South Korea has learned the lesson through our experience with the election-related false information laws, so that South Korean government was not very active in criminally punishing false information about COVID-19, but the country still came out strong and healthy.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Park, for your critical remarks on this. And maybe Rizky, you can continue from. I hope you can hear us clearly from here.
And I think we can switch this to the main screen.
We would like to see Rizky.
Yeah, so we can see Rizky on the
screen.
screen. Yeah, thank you.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I hope you
Morning.
can hear my voice.
Yes, we can
Okay,
hear
great.
you clearly from here.
Great, thank you. So my name is Rizky, you can call me Kiki. I'm working at UNICEF Indonesia as the Social and Behavior Change Specialist. But today I'll be also talking on behalf of the RCCE working group, that is Communication and Community Engagement for COVID response here in Indonesia. So UNICEF together with IFRC was facilitated this RCCE working group. So misinformation clearly affect the acceptance of both not only COVID-19 vaccines in Indonesia, but also on routine immunization.
If there are government officers out there and there are governments out there, that is the message that we try to put across. That if you are here and if you're speaking in any capacity, we take that as your personal opinion, not as an opinion of the government itself. And I think that is the beauty of APrIGF. That is where it is different from other conferences where you are representing your your organization or but over here you are representing your own voice. Of course, my experience is a mix of government and civil society that influences my opinion of what I say here, but that does not mean that this is what my organization is saying about this or that. Of course, you can talk about it in informal discussions over a coffee table with one-to-one conversations, but on the mic, you are in your own individual capacity. So we would, of course, like to engage with governments more on this. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Waqas, and thanks also for making that call for governments to engage more, which I think is critical, right? Gaia, if I can come to you next. I think the other important stakeholder, especially for internet governance, of course, is the private sector. They play a key role in decision-making around the things that happen online and on the internet. So how do we engage with them more? What do they look for when they come to processes like this? And how do we navigate our engagement with them much more effectively?
Thank you, Pavitra. Thank you for putting this together. And I think it's a really interesting and timely conversation, because the human experience with digital technologies is made possible because different stakeholders interact with it. Quite honestly, we might not have the kind of digital advanced experiences today without the private sector. We won't have these experiences without civil society informing the needs that technology needs to deliver. Especially if we look at the field of education or health, it has been a very productive partnership. When it comes to the private sector and the government, the pandemic has exposed the kind of public-private partnerships that's become possible, not just possible, that has become necessary. Because around the pandemic, there were two sectors that saw unprecedented interest and investments. That was the health sector and the ICT sector. But that has also had severe consequences for human lives, for our rights and how we experience our existence in society. So that brings us back to the question of, if the internet is not possible without these different stakeholders interacting, then internet governance is also not possible without all of these stakeholders interacting and being able to put their perspectives on the table and be heard and listen. Now, my observation is that, or rather I would say my hope is that we would see more private sector engagement in internet governance processes. Of course, it exists, and private sector, and I'm really glad that this year at the APrIGF, we made a conscious decision to make sure that the private sector is here, and that's improved. And I hope that going forward, it improves. Having the private sector be present at these spaces is really a useful moment for us as civil society, as technical community, as governments, because we get to hear perspectives that we might not usually hear. Now, especially for civil society, it's a beneficial sort of an engagement in these processes, because oftentimes, or at least that's my observation, that our intersection or our interaction with the private sector is after a problem has evolved. But this gives us an opportunity to hear and think about what kinds of problems could possibly come up. Now, in terms of our interactions with the private sector, or the private sector's interaction with these processes, a useful sort of framework that I think helps us navigate the space is the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, because it clearly sets out the responsibility of the state to protect our rights, but also places significant emphasis on the responsibility of the private sector to respect human rights, and for them together to make sure that we have access to remedies. I think that's a really helpful framework for processes such as the APrIGF and the IGF to use to look at the role of private sector. But also it's really important that, as Waqas mentioned, that we acknowledge that the private sector is not monolithic, not that all of them have the same kind of approach. So that's important. In terms of the limitations in our engagement with the private sector, I think overall access to the private sector has been difficult. In the sense of who do you speak to in a particular company, or who are the people from a particular subsector within the technology industry? That's been an interesting challenge. Also, like, do you speak to the policy head? Do you speak to the design head? It is a complex sort of ecosystem in that sense. But I would say that what would be good is to recognize that new legislation and regulation is coming up in Asia. The most recent one would be the one that's coming up in Japan in terms of due diligence that the private sector needs to do, which means that there needs to be a very firm human rights-based approach to the development of products, not just at a particular phase, but throughout the cycle of products being developed. And that means that different stakeholders need to be involved in that process of being able to inform, understand the impact of technology, and come up with solutions together. So I would overall think that processes such as the APrIGF allows us the space to put these perspectives out, to take principled and solution oriented approaches, but really the main thing is that it has to be firmly fixed in or firmly rooted in a human rights-based approach to the conversations.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Gaya, and thanks particularly for highlighting the need to have the private sector in spaces like this and to have conversations with them so that we recognize some of the issues that come up and have an opportunity to dialogue with them beforehand. And I think now I'd like to go to you, Kelly, because I'm really looking forward to hear your perspective on this conversation, because I know that this is possibly your first time or maybe the first few times that you've engaged with a process like the APrIGF, but that your work and the work that the Sinar project does is very relevant for you to be a part of processes like this so that you can engage better with your constituencies back home. So could you tell us a little bit about how your engagement has been so far and what you find as challenging when you come into a space like this and you recognize that there are these stakeholders and that there is a way to engage with them, but perhaps not necessarily available to you at the moment?
Thank you, Pavitra, for the question. So I would like to begin perhaps on a bit of my background as to how I'm here today. So it was all because it started when I was still an undergrad. I frequently was involved in this space created by an organization called Malaysian Constitutional Center for Human Rights. They had this weekly program that allows everyone to come together on specific weekly contents, discussions, or mini talks by certain selected experts on certain topics that is relevant to the people on the ground. So at that point, that was how I met my current boss, Karil, who is the coordinator at Sinar project. He was involved in this project called My MP, meaning to say they are looking for volunteers to help compiling the data on the background of our members of parliament, because at that point of time, we do not know our background, like education histories of our members of parliament, even the basic phone numbers, we do not have that at that point of time. So that was how I got involved at first in this space. I knew him because of the space created by an organization that allows people gather everyone with the same interests, working on same causes. It has no entry level, so it's really easy to begin with that entry point. And moving fast forward, later on I went to legal practice, and after I tendered resignation, I happened to see a vacancy in Sinar project, and that was how I joined the organization. So coming back to another point, which is I want to make that how I got the opportunity to come here, it was because after joining Sinar project, I find that as a very I came from a legal background, so I do not have any experience working in the digital rights space. So I found myself struggling to know what sort of standards should I set myself? What are the skills that I should equip myself to work as a program officer? And APC had a program, Digital Rights Collaborative, hoping to build out the digital rights movement. I got this news. It was not even directly, I found it through the websites or anything. It was just a newsletter forwarded by APNIC to my organization. I applied and I got it. And I was one of the very new members of that cohort. And that was how I got invited to speak here, to give out my perspectives as a new entrant in this space. So my experience coming to internet governance spaces, it was rather unique because my earlier impression of this is really on high level government people come over here to talk about public policy issues. that was my initial impression. And after joining this place, I got to know this event through APSIG. So after joining this space, I found that there are many few spaces level entry. One of it is through youth IGF. And I find that there's this opportunity where you can come here as a undergrad students, or even your postgrad students. But for people like me, I missed that earlier entry point. And I got to know after I worked for a few years down the road. But I'm not expert enough to call myself expert in any of the topics to give out my opinions as one of the main stakeholders in this space. So for people like us, we would want to know what are the things to learn, because I work mostly on internet censorship monitoring to find out what are the websites being censored in few of the countries in Southeast Asia. So I know about this area, but internet governance is so wide. I would like to also know the rest of the parts of this. So to do that, I've tried applying for like APGA. Unfortunately, I did not get it. It's normal, I think, because applications, it's normal to fail. Maybe I was just not convincing enough. But I also, another friend of mine who tried to apply an APSIG, she did not get it as well. She came from a civil servant background, but she was not involved in any of the digitalized space before. So for people like us, we are the in-betweens. We are not from the youth side, and we are not from the expert level. We find ourselves quite difficult to get into the capacity building aspects of things. So I think that is a challenge. Perhaps it could be interesting to know from Satish, what are the criteria for people like us? Because for diversity aspects, I would fall under the normal age that is not really a beginner's age of things to say. So it's quite, I find it difficult for people like us to do that. Yeah, I think that was what I want to talk about for now. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kelly, for providing that perspective. I think it would be great to have Satish respond, but I'd like to go to the audience first. But the one thing that I would like to say to you, though, and I think that everyone in the room will agree, is that you are a very important stakeholder in this process, as all of us are, right? And I think it's to have you here and to hear you speak about this is equally important and enriching for this process overall. So thank you so much for sharing your perspective, and also for highlighting how difficult it is sometimes when there are certain, as you said, groups of people for whom we already don't have spaces or entry points that are clear. And so it then you find it harder than to navigate your way into this space unless there are very specific opportunities provided for you. And I want to take this point across to all of you as well. And I want to ask actually first here in this audience, how many of you are here at an APrIGF for the first time? Would you like to raise your hands? Oh, wow. Okay, there are quite a few of you. And how many of you have engaged in internet governance processes before? Okay, a few more. So there are quite a few of you for whom this is your very first experience, either with an internet governance process or with the APrIGF, right? And I'd really like to hear from you on how your experience has been so far, but also what you find a bit challenging now that you're here, and what you perhaps hope to happen, or what you hope to learn over the next 3 days that would make this engagement meaningful for you. Is there anyone who'd like to share your thoughts with us? It would be really great to hear from you. Okay, so we have also people from the online audience, I believe, who would like to share. Can we go to them first? Is there a way for us to read out the questions? Yeah. Christine, can we have a mic to provide to Lee? Oh. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lee, and I'm supporting Pavi today. I have 2 comments in chat, not really questions. In response to what Kelly shared, someone here called Kiki said, "This very much speaks to me. Thank you. It is a great question to pose." And Zana said, "Thank you, Kelly, for the question to Satish. how do we cater for the in-betweens? I too am here in this liminal space. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks. So while we wait for people in the audience to share your thoughts as well, and I think that if you'd like to, you can come up in front to the mic here and share. Maybe I'd like to first pose to you, Satish, the question that Kelly asked and that was repeated.
Thanks very much for the question. And before I get into the question, I should also perhaps raise the technical community angle that I didn't earlier. It's an incredible support by APNIC that really resulted in this entire cluster of events coming together. When we started out this discussion several months back, we had no clue as to how this is going to turn out. And APNIC, of course, is a technical community here. So I must point out that they did take the initiative in organizing this. And for me personally, this is a cluster of about 10 different international programs over the whole month. From here, I go to KL. From KL, I go to Hyderabad. Everywhere there, we have organized programs back to back. So this has happened because somebody has taken the initiative to suggest that we come together. Otherwise, it would have been kind of too little, too distributed, kind of very weak kind of a thing. But this is very, very strong. We have all come together. And I think the credit for that does go to APNIC and the technical community here in Asia Pacific, which actually points out the fact that there is no systemic problem that impacts the ability of the technical community to engage. They are very strong here. The second point I'd like to raise before I get into the question is that this time, APrIGF, APSIG, we have taken an extra step of having a reserved seat for people with disabilities. This is new. We have never had that before. Our program, when we designed the program, we found that some of the sessions, which we thought was very interactive and all that, could not be understood by the people with disabilities in the room. We had 2 people who were blind. So it's a learning experience for us. While engaging with the diversity, we encourage people with disabilities to come and participate, but not everything that we do is suited for them, which means we have to go back to the drawing board. Now to the question of what to do with the in-betweens. Actually, we have nothing as in-betweens. For us, everybody is welcome. And there is nothing as age or background. The only issue is that, like was mentioned, this is a very vast area. And you have to catch on something and then specialize in it. It is very difficult for someone to be a generalist across the spectrum of different domains within internet governance. So it is good if you can kind of identify what you like as your personal preference. Is it technical? Is it legal? Is it social? Is it rights? So the internet governance domain provides for everybody. Of all age groups, we have seen people who have walked in after retirement. That's not a bar at all. So the good news is that everybody is welcome. The bad news, of course, is that we don't have spaces for especially funded travel slots for people. So this is a major barrier. Although in theory we can participate over Zoom and online media, in practice there is a value to coming together like this. The people who are here are actually very lucky, and you have actually a great edge over others, a push, and this should serve you well into the future. And for the people who have not been able to make it, my only advice would be to keep trying, especially at their own national level first, if they don't get to the regional levels immediately. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Satish, for raising 2 very important points. I think that we have people in the audience. Yeah, please go ahead. Can I request you to go ahead first?
My name is Shanna Feng. I am the program coordinator of the Asia Pacific Youth IGF. We just had this Youth IGF in this weekend, and then we get a chance to meet an MSG member, also Pavitra, at our meeting. Like what Satish said earlier, whoever is in this room right now is really lucky because we get to meet in person. And then especially for youth or newcomers, many of us didn't get to get fellowship or the chances to meet, but doesn't mean that we can't really engage. So from our experience yesterday, we had a discussion at why IGF also identify a few things. Of course, financial support from organization in order to participate is like one key factors that hinder whether you can be here. But then supporting on other area from organizations is also important, because young people or the new generations, even they don't get the chance to be here in the room physically, they want to engage. And in our internet governance community, there are many other areas that we should engage other than the event or the forum only. And so I would say we have so many young people joining from the virtual room here also. And this is a good sign, because what we do right now is like collaboration can bring us to to achieve what we want to do as a community. And then with this kind of conversations and support, we believe that can improve. And then I believe there are so many new people in this room, and it's their first time to be here. That's why I take this chance to try to communicate and bring their notes and their output from that discussion here, because sometimes young people, they think they're first time, especially we Asians, sometimes we are like more reserved and shy and not tend to speak up, right? So I would just like to bring this out here, a few points. And I think from yesterday, young people always think support from organization and anyone in this community, not only financial, but like participation from MSG or other organizations, will be a big support to younger people also. So that's my comment here. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much, Jenna. Who would you like to go next?
Thank you so much. Hello everyone, my name is Lokendra. I'm from Bangalore, India. I'm a PhD scholar there in my early phase, and I broadly research on cyberspace and internet. And so I would like to respond to moderator's question on our experience here. Like for the first time, I'm participating in any internet governance platform, and APrIGF, of course. And so far, I have been reading literature on internet governance, how it functions, how it works, what its history is, and everything. But I wanted to participate in person in APrIGF because I wanted to see how it actually happens, as opposed to how it's depicted in literature. How actually multi-stakeholderism as a governance principle takes place, how all diverse views are taken into account, and so on and so forth. So I'm really looking forward to observe this APrIGF very closely and see how actually it unfolds, and then take those insights into my research so that it's more insightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thanks also to you and Jenna for highlighting the importance of actually being in the room. I know there are hands at the back as well. Yeah, would you like to go first and then to the person in the back?
Hello, I'm Jaewon from Korea, and I was APrIGF 2019 fellow and now doing a PhD in Germany. Correct me if I'm wrong, but ever since I come here, I haven't seen any people back from APrIGF 2019 fellow, and I think there's something wrong here, because I think if you give a fellowship, it should be something that should be continuously coming up, not just a one-time visit and that's it. And when I see other people, usually it's because they get to have a job that is not in the internet governance. Like, for example, if you don't work for ICANN or ISAC or something, it might be difficult for them to have like 1 week leave from the company or getting approval from the supervisor. So if you are not the youth or student anymore, how would you be able to manage to come here in person, even though you might be able to get the scholarship or something? For me, I was lucky enough to get the support from Korea and German government to get the grant to come here, but not every country will have this opportunity to have something if you're not the youth or fellow. So I was wondering, what are your thought or your strategies to keep the fellows or new voices coming back? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thanks for raising that issue of sustainability, right? Of people having more opportunities to engage on a more consistent basis. Is there anyone on the panel who'd like to respond to that?
Just one thing I'd like to mention here. As you mentioned that you were there in 2019 as a fellow and you didn't see many of those fellows being repeated in this fellowship program for this year. That is actually what we are here about, empowering new voices, right? We have new fellows because we want to reach out to more people and new people. It's not that none of the fellows has been repeated. Some of the fellows here are a second-time fellow, but we also have a policy in APrIGF that you don't get fellowship more than twice. Why? Because we want to have new people over there. Just to give you one little perspective on this, for the fellowship criteria, we don't have more than 2 fellows per country, and then 1 male and 1 female. Now, if you look at that structure, we have around 30 fellows, and we have like 52 economies and more than that in Asia Pacific. That sort of narrows down the process, or makes this process very competitive as well, And since we want to encourage new voices, new persons to come over and and have this experience. That's why maybe you don't see too many fellows being repeated out there. And to your second point about, we can't make your employer give you the leave But what we can do is do the second best thing, and the second best thing is to join us online, right? You can at least do that, listen to what is happening out there, and maybe keep your fingers crossed that next year you will have the leave or a new employer maybe. Thank you.
Thanks, Waqas. Any other perspectives from the panel?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly, for bringing those points up, because I leaned over to tell her that she probably knows a lot more than she's letting out, and she probably knows a lot more than she thinks she does. But more importantly, the people that you think are experts probably know a lot lesser than you think they know, because that's just how this field is, because it's constantly evolving, and we're playing catch up, because what our understanding was yesterday probably is not what it is today. So it's a constant learning process. So what you really need is that willingness to unlearn what you had, convinced, or what you were convinced about yesterday, and learn new things. So that's the first thing, is that everybody knows something, and as experiences of the internet, whether actively or passively, I think we have a voice. So that's the first important note. But the other thing I wanted to kind of just flag is that the APrIGF is an extremely critical and important process, but internet governance is not just what happens in conferences. A lot of the decisions around internet governance happens outside conferences, outside these processes, and it's possible for us to engage. And probably these critical decisions are made well ahead or after these conferences. And we had a lot of discussion yesterday about national IGFs, regional IGFs, and I think that for people who are not able to make it to the regional IGFs, national IGFs are a fantastic opportunity. And if you're working, for instance, in a private sector company, then engaging in the policy processes of that company means you are engaging with the internet governance process. It's multi-stakeholder, not just because it looks multi-stakeholder. It's about what we bring to that table, right? In terms of how do we build our capacity, I think that there are actually fantastic opportunities out there. There are resources out there that's really, really helpful. One of the things that comes to my mind is what APC has developed in terms of internet rights or human rights. That goes back, I don't know how many years, but it's still a very, very critical sort of module, series of modules that you could use. APSIG has so many modules. ISOC has so many programs available. And APNIC has a lot of programs available. So the internet is actually a fantastic resource, and you will be able to find what you're looking for. You will find opinions online, and a lot of resources to help you navigate that. But also, I just wanted to quickly flag that one of the things that really makes APrIGF special to me is that the MSG of APrIGF is a culmination of fantastic people. The people that have open hearts, open arms. You can pretty much reach out to anybody at the MSG, and I'm sure they'll be happy to sit down with you, talk to you about their perspectives, offer you the kind of resources they have.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Gaya. I know that there are, I'm sorry, there's one person in the back who had their hand raised first, and if I could go to them first and then come back to you, if that's okay.
Thank you. You hear me?
Yeah.
My name is Jorge Varela. I am the CEO of TruxGo. And one of the experiences I would like to share is when we make the transition from IPv4 to IPv6, all the governments, changed, and we got many decisions about the resources, especially when you have, few IPs, when you get million. So it was the first step we made was a mess. Then we have to share all the steps clearly. So that's the thing. When you have this change, you have to change all the organization and to make the fits you want to figure out to all the resources to get it work. So that's the thing I wanted to share.
Thank you so much. Yeah, please go ahead. To the person, right? Yeah, Pablo first, and then the person behind.
Thank you very much. I have just 3 important points. My experience shows like when we are talking about the inclusions and marginalized group, in Asia Pacific region, the people who are really positive and welcoming, and we are seeing There is the disability issues are highly exposed here, and we are seeing many sessions and everything. But when we look up in the national level IGF or international level, we are really very frustrated. Not many countries, national level chapters are highly motivated about the inclusion issues or disability issues. And now we need to raise this in the national level first, because if we cannot get the people from the national level, then international level will not be more responsive. And lastly, the IGF. I think many marginalized group are not getting chance to go there, talk there, as there is less opportunity. Yesterday we got the chance, but unfortunately I was unable to raise these issues. They need some kind of strategy how they can bring the more marginalized group in the global forum to raise their voice. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, please, the person in the back. Just the row behind. Yeah.
Hi, I'm V. I was part of the APSIG, and I'm also now part of APrIGF. This is my first time coming to these events, and it's been very interesting. I think my comments are more a reflection of what I've seen and what I hope to continue to see in the next year of the fellowship. I want to recognize first that, I mean, I've heard diversity said at least 1,000 times over the last 4 days. And it's important to acknowledge that there needs to be space for diverse conversations and things, but also it's a little frustrating hearing diversity said so often and just clubbing all these experiences into, we need to be diverse. And then and then you have like one solution for what is diverse, because there's so many individual experiences of diversity. My glasses are fogging up. So I think it's important then, and I hope that this is something that the executive committee will do, to listen to individual feedback later on, or ask for individual feedback later on what made it diverse for each person, or if their needs were met or how they could be met better. Because we did have a feedback session, but with a lot of things that have happened in the last week, it's been kind of rushed because there isn't time, and that's fine. And there are restrictions on time and how much people can listen to in a day. But I hope that will continue. I also want to recognize that it is very difficult to engage online. I've been part of online conferences before. It's very boring sometimes, even if it's very engaging in person. We had remote sessions which were not as engaging, and not because of the speakers. It's just a difficult way to communicate something to people in the room. So I want to recognize that it is good to see, and I'm not saying that this is a criticism of APrIGF, but it is good to see that you can join online, but also recognize that it's very difficult to network online or to take initiative the way that you can do in a room with physical people around. And yeah, and I do want to learn more about what the long-term fellowship goal is, and maybe these are individual conversations to have. I have a great mentor, hi Pablo. So I hope that there will be opportunities that will be we will be made aware of later on in this year also, like somebody spoke about this, what is the goal for people joining back if they want to continue to be part of these spaces. I stumbled on this opportunity absolutely by accident. Somebody forwarded a newsletter to me. I would not have known about this, even though I kind of work in a similar space. So I want to know how these opportunities will be made available to us, or outside of just like newsletters and things like that. That's all. Amina?
Go ahead.
This is just a comment, but hers was a question. You want to go? I just want to share. Hi everyone, I'm Amina from Malaysia. I've been in the space for probably the past few years. I started with YIGF, with NetMission and .Asia. I totally agree with Jawan that there needs to be a space for these fellows to come back. And I think it starts with probably the organizations. And I would like to recognize, for example, APNIC is going to launch Orbit soon. And then we NetMission fellows are on Signal. So I see that there are these efforts to bring back the fellows and come together, meet at events. And looking forward to future engagements. I would like to see as well, like a point from Jenna on the empowerment. I believe what made me continue was the empowerment that I got from senior stakeholders, other organizations that have been so friendly. And I would also like to call upon the youth to just come forward, ask your questions, just speak up, because there's no one in this space are gonna say, hey, it's dumb. No, it's a very open and positive space. And I just wanna take this opportunity to invite everyone. ICANN is happening the end of this week in Kuala Lumpur. So if you have a chance to drop by, registration is still open. You can register on the website and maybe we can meet there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for raising such fantastic points. I think we have one more speaker and then I'm going to go back to the panel because we're almost at the top of the hour. Yeah, the person in the last row, please.
So hello everyone, I am Amasha from Sri Lanka. So I just wanted to wonder in talking with Jaina and everyone's idea. I think you all know about the situation today in Sri Lanka. Really the situation is increasing, the crisis fuel and everything is increasing day by day. And really I needed to talk in you representing my country, as really that I'm really wondering about this opportunity. And also especially in Sri Lanka, in this moment there is lack of things and everything like such a thing. So me and my friend Bhavani today joined from Sri Lanka. So just we was suggesting as if we can start any initiative just as IGFs in Sri Lanka, really it's a support for us in our country. And also just I when hearing about others about the empowerment in our country, really personally me, I was really bothering on how I thought I will not be able to join today as in the organization. So really they are unable to help in us in funding and those things. So I also personally face number of problems in finding my fundings and those things. So I just suggest if we can start any initiative in Sri Lanka, really it will be helpful for us. So I hope we can get any opportunity to start something in our country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective and the difficult situation in Sri Lanka. I'm really glad that you're able to join us. Unfortunately, we're almost at the top of the hour and I want to go back to the panel for some final comments. But thank you all so much for sharing. And I know this is just the start of the conversation and hopefully we'll have more time to speak about these issues. But I want to come back to all of you with some of the really important points that were raised, right? And I think the first of it is when we talk about diversity, and Satish, you raised this as well. It's actually quite different from actually talking about diversity and then making sure we're able to accommodate all the different kinds of diversity in a way that's meaningful to the people who are engaging. Second, this issue of actually being consistent, allowing consistent opportunities for people to keep engaging so that they don't drop off the map in a sense. And really the kind of outreach that we can do to make sure that more people are aware of processes like this and more people have opportunities to engage. So it'll be great to hear final thoughts from all of you. And Satish, if I can start from you.
Yeah, so before I get into that, the APSIG secretary is from Sri Lanka. She's a lady. Please contact Sagarika for more details if you want to set up something in Sri Lanka. My closing statement would be that please do not consider APrIGF to be the destination. It is one step in the journey. There are several paths out there. So please, spread out, identify the opportunities and treat APrIGF as just one step in the whole process. Thank you.
Waqas?
I think one of the things that we would actually request of you is to actually take the word out there. APrIGF is a forum. It's a discussion forum. It's not a decision-making forum. We invite each and everybody. Anybody can register. Anybody can attend. There is no bar on anybody to come and who cannot join APrIGF. And it's not just to attend the conference. If you want to actually work with APrIGF, if you want to work with the MSG, we call it MSG, the Multi-stakeholder Group, which is the organizing arm of the APrIGF. We actually don't need anything from you. All we need from you is you just send an email to our secretariat that I would like to join, I would like to volunteer, and that's it. You're in. All we need is your time and your dedication with it, nothing else. So if you want to help organize this event, please join the MSG. If you want to see this event grow, just tweet about it, just write about it, just tell people about it. We can do all the comms that we have, but if 250 people who would come here to attend, or 500 people who would come attend, they would spread the word. That would, of course, go faster than this. Thank you.
Thanks, Waqas. Gaya?
I think that the discussion around diversity is probably what I'll focus on, and I think it's a really important conversation, and we've been having this conversation at APrIGF for many years. In fact, a couple of years ago, we set up the Stakeholder Engagement Committee, which focuses on looking at how the different stakeholders, whether the sectors they are from, gender, in terms of requirements, in terms of geographical spread out, what is that engagement looking like? We've been working more with data. We've identified which are the sectors, which are the subregions that haven't been as active as we'd hoped, and we've actively worked towards making sure they're heard. And we'd love to hear more about what that looks like, because what is diversity is a question we repeatedly ask ourselves, and we are trying to push. And so I can assure you that it's not because of lack of interest. We're trying, and I'm sure that we can use more understanding, we can use more intentional focus on it, and I hope that next year we do a little bit more, and the year next we do a little bit more. So that's one, and I wanted to echo Waqas's call. Please join the MSG, because that's the first thing we noticed at the Stakeholder Engagement Committee, and I think the chair and the vice chair are here, Pablo and Shah, that we need newer voices. Actually, might be a little sick of the existing crowd being the only ones that are there. So please show up, and I'm sure we'll find something to do together.
Thank you, Gaya. And Kelly, over to you for the last word on this.
I want to say is that I echo what you have mentioned from participants about spaces. That is one. And what I mean by that is not just more opportunities for new people to join the Internet Governance Forum, but also more spaces by people on the ground that creates entry point for people that would one day lead to their presence today in APrIGF or some other Internet Governance Forum. So for that to happen, perhaps some support for more local organizations to create these spaces, more conversations on areas that would one day lead to your participation today. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kelly. And thank you all so much for sharing what you have. I think it's been extremely insightful, enriching to have this conversation, and hopefully given us lots to think about when we think about how to engage better and how to make sure participation is better in processes like this. I think that this year we were very deliberate at the APrIGF when we thought about the theme, which is really about putting people at the center of processes like this and of decision making around internet governance. And I hope that today's conversation was a starting point for that, and that we can continue from here. So thank you all so much. Thanks so much to the panel for joining us. And thanks to all of you for sharing. Yeah. Thank you, Babu.
Recording stopped.
Hello? Hello? Okay, everyone.